All right, new battery charger. One that was in the boat was a trickle charger. It's not really trickle charging anymore. How do you open these stupid things? Ooh, fancy packaging. Fancy bag. Kinda pretty beefy. Not bad. Not bad at all. Somebody should clean this thing, huh? Yeah. Alright, that's dead. That's a doornail. So some things, sometimes it's the little things in a product that you like. Kind of sell it for you. So I'm taking this thing out of the box gingerly, as you saw. I noticed a little built-in fuse on the actual terminals. I was like, well, that's neat. Never seen that before. Good idea. I'm going to short of the charger when I spark them together to see if it works. So, not bad. Then I also noticed where did it go? The little built-in Velcro strap onto the cord, so you can wind it all up when you're done. You know, it's sometimes you get those, but they're not actually on the cord, so you just lose them and it doesn't do you any good. So having it built on like that's a pretty good idea. For charging, read the instructions. Yeah, I'll do that. It looks like it's ramping up. It's charging. Taking this dead battery and rejuvenating it, it seems. Well, I'm gonna go read the instructions and let that charge up. So far, that's a pretty neat little charger. When I turn my engine off, I unplug the fuel line and let it run out of gas. Sometimes people notice I do that, and then they say, oh, that's horrible for your motor. You're gonna ruin your engine doing that. Oh, you shouldn't do that. Blah, blah, blah. This video, I'm showing you why I do it. All right, water isn't flowing. Let's see what happens. I just went through this yesterday on a motor. It seems like what happens, I think, is the sealant and stuff that you use when you put in the water pump slowly starts to, the excess, slowly starts making its way up the water tube and clogs this thing up. Don't know why. So what's the purpose of this video? Am I trying to talk you into running your engine out of gas? Well, no. You do what you want, your motor. You know what I mean? But, okay, direction change. Sometimes I get asked why I remove the VRO pump. The reason being is so I can run the engine out of fuel. Why do I run the engine out of fuel? Modern fuel sucks. Just straight off the bat. It deteriorates aluminum, it gums up, it turns to gel, it just eats fuel line, it just all around, the stuff just sucks. By shutting it off, you're getting as much fuel out of there as you can. There is always going to be some little residual traces in there, don't get me wrong, but for the vast majority of it, I'd say 98.7% of it is out of there. Enough to where when it, a year or so later, it'll start back up. I wish I made this video last week because I had an engine that had been sitting for 4 years. 4 years! And it started right back up as the day I last used it. This one has been sitting a while. It recently, fuel lines fell apart, so I needed new fuel lines, but Hasn't actually been started in a year. Started up fine. And I'm sure tomorrow when I go to use it, it'll run just fine too. VRO pump. This engine no longer has one. So what is the problem with modern gas? It's that 10% ethanol that's inside of there. So what happens if you leave the E10 inside of the carburetors, you know, the 10% ethanol gas? They say that the ethanol attracts moisture, aka water. They also say that it's already got some in it. You can separate the methanol out of the fuel, I guess, by letting it sit and then somehow siphoning off the top. For a lot of people, that's not realistic either. You know, you go to the gas pump, put gas in it, and go about your way. I guess as it breaks down, the gas evaporates, leaves all the moisture content behind, which slowly starts eating away the carburetors, causing, you know, not rust, but corrosion. Put gas in it next time, all those particles then try to clog everything up, and carburetors need to be rebuilt. If it sits for too long, the carburetors just turn to just junk, and you're replacing them. On modern motors, you may still be able to get the carburetors, so that's not a problem. But if you have an old antique clunker like these things, that's a problem. You don't want to have to try to hunt down all these carburetors, hoping that they don't have the same issue. So what I do to remedy it is simply run them out of fuel. Now there's a big debate there too, saying that running them out of fuel can hurt your engine. Which, I don't know. I'm noticing a lot of posts on the various forums I'm on. People say like their motorcycle shop, their local engine shop has a sign up, no more warranty on carburetor work. The reason they're doing that is because the gas just sits in the carburetor and eats it up. And people keep taking it back to the shop after it's been a month of it sitting and the thing doesn't start and work. It needs a carburetor rebuild again, and they just don't warranty it. So with the traditional fuel system, run it out of gas. Very little gas remains in the system. Most of the time, pretty much every time I've seen, it starts when you want it to again. It's an easy fix. Now with a VRO system, the manual, your service manual, the engine manual, clearly says right inside of there, do not run it out of fuel. Now, that's not a realistic option. You're going to have a point in your boating life where that engine's going to run out of gas. What happens when you do? Well, you're introducing oil, but no gas. So oil then floods the carburetors, and it doesn't really start next time. That's not entirely true, though, because it does. When you run it out of gas, you put gas in it, pump the gas back in there, the gas now mixes back with the oil. You're going to be over-oiling, but it's going to start right up. However, I think the problem comes when you run them out of gas, but not oil. And now the oil is flooding the carburetors, and it sits there. And I think it turns to kind of jelly gum after a while, and then you're back in the same boat. Your carburetor's clogged up and it needs to get rebuilt. So you don't want to run the VROs out of gas. A lot of people are going to say, you know, I've done it, I do it all the time, no problem. That very well may be the case, but maybe not always. One of the other reasons why I get rid of the VRO system, if you look at the cost of a VRO pump, you know, they're $400 to $600. You look at the cost of a fuel pump, it's $100. Which one lasts longer? Well, a fuel pump rebuild kit's like $30. VRO rebuild kit anywhere between $100 and $300. So any way you look at it, it's a cheaper option, and I can run them out of gas. So that is basically the reason I do it. You know, VROs, they are expensive, and you shouldn't really run them out of gas. Fuel pumps are cheap, and you can run them out of gas if your heart's desire. Now, the debate of should you run an engine out of gas is, you know, it's an old debate. Is there an answer for it? Not that I know of. Have I had any problems running my cars out of gas? Well, let me tell you. When I first started driving, before I was employed, I ran out of gas all the time. Put more gas in it, it fired right back up. It never really been an issue, so I don't know where that logic comes from. But what I can tell you, the instructions of my little Predator engine here on the garden tractor, The shutting off instructions are to turn the fuel off. That's how you're supposed to turn these things off, because they're not dumb. They know that if they don't put that in there after, a month of this thing sitting and it needs a carburetor refilled, people are just going to go straight return these. I think they put that in the instructions, so you shut the fuel off so the carburetor doesn't need to be rebuilt every month, and they don't have to keep replacing these things. The mini bike back there, when you shut the fuel off on the little peacock on the gas tank, it slowly drips back into the carburetor. So I rode it around for a while, started building the house, and I never started it back up again to run it out of gas. It needed a carburetor rebuild, but it was made with such cheap material, rebuild wasn't going to happen. I had to replace the carburetor. I then noticed gas dripped back into that thing again, and the new carburetor is now junk as well. So 4 carburetors later, and somewhere around here, I have a spare carburetor that I install whenever I want to ride the mini bike. So in a not so clearly explained nutshell, the reason I removed the VRO pumps is simply so I can run them out of gas, and it saves money on the rebuild. VROs, they get blamed for a lot, and they shouldn't. They're reliable. When they fail, they oil. They don't lose oil and gas, they just over oil. They get blamed for a lot of things they shouldn't. People will say, I lost a cylinder. It's because of that stupid VRO pump. And yeah, that's not probably why they lost a cylinder. Chances are they had a clogged carburetor causing one cylinder to run lean. That's why they lost the cylinder. Think about it, the VRO failed. You wouldn't lose one cylinder, you'd lose all 4. Well, let's say I lost 2 cylinders on this side. Again, not the VRO's fault. VRO just mixes oil and gas. You would have lost more. The only reason I've heard people say that I agree with to why they delete the VRO because VRO sucks is slow speed use. When you're idling around all day long, you got to remember the V stands for variable. VRO, variable ratial oiling. So when you're idling around all day long and you have 1 to 100 mix on your carburetors, and then all of a sudden you want to full throttle it, for a little while you're putting a lot of load on the motor with very little oil. Do that enough and you start wearing it down prematurely. I completely agree that's what happens. That makes more sense to me than an engine died because of VRO failure. I do that all the time. I idle around looking for junk in the river, river treasure and whatnot, and then I get bored and I full throttle it out of there. But I know my oil is mixed at 50 to 1 and everything's fine. On a side note, this battery charger is pretty neat. This is a free Power Wheels that I got off the old Craigslist. It uses what they Power Wheels calls a smart drive, which basically means we have a logic board. We actually have 4 logic boards in here. It uses a bunch of magnetic sensors. That logic board died. Has a battery management system in there. It died, doesn't work at all. So I removed it and went with the traditional route. Instead of it being a smart drive, it's now a dumb drive. I rigged these joysticks to become switches, a couple of relays, and an old just random battery that I had. Thing works great. Kid loves it. No speed control, but the original speed control in this thing was you open the seat, you push a button, different lights blink, and that's your speed control. So you had on or backwards. So I see no difference. Anywho, this charger can charge that battery up for me. Instead of a 12 volt normal, we go over to 12 volt small, which is what that little thing is. I'm going to pick up our cables. And it starts charging. I think. There we go. Yeah, it's pretty dead. The kid drove it until the wheels wouldn't turn anymore, which is expected. So anyhow, if you're interested in the battery charger, I'll put a link below for it. Otherwise, I will see y'all later.